In this video, we're going to start diving in with Halion and learning more about the user interface. And I mainly want to focus on what I think are the most important things to learn as a beginner. This can be a very advanced program and it's easy to get lost. We'll be working with the user interface throughout the entire series, so you'll continue to learn things about how to manipulate the user interface as we move forward. Let's first start describing what Halion is and how it works. Basically, it's a multi-channel virtual instrument, and we have the ability of loading up to 64 sounds within one instance of Halion into the slots on the left. Now, the sounds in Halion we refer to as programs. They're called programs because every single sound that ships with Halion is created from this set of core components like synthesizers and samplers. So literally any sound or program that ships with Halion we'd be able to recreate from scratch using these core set of components. We control the sounds and the slots with MIDI. By default, out of the box, we can't see all 64 of these slots. We can reveal them by clicking on this icon here, which will show all of the empty slots that we don't yet have programs loaded into. So here you'll see all 64 slots. Each slot can be assigned a MIDI channel. Now there's 16 MIDI channels per device. And the way that Halion is able to control 64 slots at once is by using MIDI ports. Now, this is the standalone version of Halion, which has a few different things in the user interface that aren't present when we use the plugin version. It's mainly in this top bar here. So this top bar you use mainly to define your MIDI hardware. But if you click on this gear icon, it opens up the standalone version of Halion's preferences. And here you'll see each one of the 4 ports that has 16 MIDI channels, which in total provide us the ability of controlling 64 programs at once. So essentially each port would have to have a different MIDI device. But that's only true in the standalone version. When we're using it in a DAW, these ports we'll see available elsewhere. We'll continue to work with this idea throughout the series. Now, if you are using the standalone version, the other most important thing that you'll want to configure is going to be under the ASIO driver tab. This is where you select the audio device that you'll be hearing Halion play back through. So if you're using the standalone, just make sure to click on the preferences button and then set up your audio and MIDI hardware appropriately. The other concept I want to explain is the Halion software is basically a shell, which can contain all these different windows and modules, which we call zones. When a zone is selected or active, you'll see it highlighted in blue. These zones provide us some type of insight into being able to control the Halion software. And they are flexible, so we can customize the look of Halion however we want. You'll see when we hover our mouse on these dividers, we can resize different aspects of the user interface. And in the upper left corner of any one of these zones, we have this area where we can see these faint lines. Now, if we click and drag these zones, we can move them to different areas of the user interface, which we can see with these little yellow dividers. The dividers indicate where that zone is going to be placed when we release the mouse button. And when we release our mouse button, it will create a new instance of that window wherever we drop it. In the upper right corner of the zones, we'll see a small down arrow. This allows us to further customize the user interface. So if we wanted to remove a zone from the user interface, we could click close. Now, if we take a zone and drag it outside of Halion's window, it will undock it from the Halion user interface, and we're given a floating window. And this can be useful in order to keep the visual clutter down when we're working with multiple modules in Halion. But I'm sure you can see at this point where it's kind of easy to get lost in the user interface and easily mess something up and not know where to go. So you might get stuck with something like this, which is kind of silly and not very usable. So the arrangement and position of the different elements of the user interface are called screen sets. A screen set is essentially a preset that stores the position and arrangement of the different elements of the user interface that we want to see. We can save and load screen sets by clicking on the screen set icon here. You'll see a small list of different factory screen sets and the option to save a screen set. For instance, the advanced screen set will show us almost everything that's available in Halion, while the minimize screen set reduces a lot of screen clutter and just gives us the most basic features. From here, if we wanted to open up a certain editor or window, we could click on the new window button. This will give us several different options to choose from. So if we're creating our own sample set, we could choose sample recorder and editor, which are the 2 most commonly used screens when creating samples of your own. And that way we can just keep the screen clutter down and just work with the most important tools that are related to our task. Most importantly, we need to know how to get back to the default setting again. So if you ever mess up and you're not sure where to go in Halion, or you're missing a part of the user interface, you can always come back to the beginning again by clicking on the Screen Set button and choosing the default factory preset. Now, we'll be getting into all the knobs and controls and different pages of the user interface as we continue through this series. And we'll also be continuing to work with the user interface and some of the different aspects of creating your own screen sets. In the next video, we're going to start digging into programs. Stay tuned, and we'll see you then.